Good afternoon, viewers. A happy weekend to you out there and a warm welcome to our News Insights, where we take a trip to the Nigerian political landscape, snipping into the actions of political actors that are shaping the Nigerian politics. Here we are also mindful of the actions, realignment, and the rhetorics that are surrounding the 2027 general elections. Today, we are taking a look at Jonathan and the call for Jonathan's comeback. Nigeria 2027 election shocker. Youths rally for Goodluck, Jonathan comeback. Is it a crisis or a strategy? In a political climate already thick with speculation, ambition, and restless electorate, a new chorus has begun to rise from Nigerian youth demographic, one that seek in a political climate already thick with speculation, ambition, and a restless electorate, a new chorus has begun to rise from Nigeria's youth demographic, one that seeks to pull a familiar figure back into the center of national discourse. The name being echoed is that of Goodluck Jonathan, a man whose presidency ended way back in 2015, under circumstances that were, or at the time, both historic and humbling. And if you ask me, is it really humbling, or did Goodluck Jonathan chicken out? You know, on our insights, we lay the questions bare as we stroll through the news, the ones involving strong political actors, while we allow you, the listener, or the citizens, to make your informed choice and opinion by giving the answers. Today, however, a section or a cross-section of Nigerian young youths appears determined to recast his legacy, not as a closed chapter, but as unfinished business. Does Jonathan have an unfinished business in the Aso Rock and with the Nigerian economic and political space? What exactly is driving this renewed political romance with a former leader who for years maintained a careful distance from the turbulence of active politics? Is this nostalgia, strategic calculation, or a deeper incitement of the current political order? These are questions that cannot be brushed aside, especially as Nigeria inches toward yet another electoral cycle where expectations remain very high, but trust remains very fragile. Reports indicate that youth groups have begun organizing rallies and advocacy campaigns urging Jonathan to consider a presidential bid or throwing his hat into the ring come 2027. Their argument, at least on the surface, appears straightforward. They point to what they described as his stabilizing influence during his tenure. His concession of defeat in 2015, which many still regard as a rare act of democratic maturity in African politics and his perceived moderation in handling Nigeria's complex ethnic, religious, and diverse fault lines. In this, Jonathan conceding defeat in 2015, was it really Jonathan's will? Or was Jonathan, forced into conceding defeat? But politics is really about surface narratives. Beneath this carefully constructed admiration lies a deeper dissatisfaction with the present. And every one of you can attest to that. When young people, especially those of Nigerian descent, rally behind a former president, it is not merely about the individual. It is a signal, perhaps even a protest, against those currently in power and the alternatives on offer. Is Jonathan the best bet available on the Nigerian offer? Among all the political gladiators who have shown interest in the Nigerian presidency come 2027, is Jonathan so qualified? Could you see Jonathan's admiration or the call for Jonathan to stage a comeback as Jonathan being the only one who could handle the battered economic fortunes of the Nigerian state? The answer is within your purview. In that sense, this movement as much about the failures of today as it is about the memories of yesterday. Yes, we can recall with nostalgia the economic advantage Nigeria had during 2015 and the woes, seemingly as it is, or it looks like the Nigerian economy finds itself today. You can juxtapose that the Jonathan era Nigeria were more economically balanced, becoming the first economic advantage country in Africa, followed by South Africa. But today, your guess as good as mine, where Nigeria is situated in the economically advanced nations in Africa, not to talk of the world as at present. To understand the implications of this push, one must revisit Jonathan's years with clarity rather than sentiment. His presidency was marked with significant challenges: the escalation of insurgency in the Northwest, widespread criticism over corruption, and economic vulnerabilities that became increasingly difficult to manage. At the same time, his administration oversaw periods of economic growth, that is to be noted, expanded telecommunications, and maintained a level of political openness to allow dissent to flourish among Nigerians. So which version of Jonathan are these youths rallying behind will be the million-dollar question. Jonathan, the reformer or the underperformer? The Democrats or Jonathan, the leader, criticized for indecision? Recall that the APC then, as they were in the opposition, tagged Jonathan a weakling. They called him a woman on seat and brandished him with all unprintable names just to, drag down Jonathan's administration to the mud, although they really achieved their aim because they didn't waste time to take over power from Jonathan till death. But the question will be, as the APC, as opposition then, with all their promises and rhetorics, have they fared any better? Have Nigerians felt the impact of whatever promises and change they brought about in 2015? It is this duality that makes the current campaign both intriguing and contentious. It is really contentious because Jonathan's administration is to be seen as a two-edged sword. Nigeria made a lot of gains, and Nigeria also made lots of losses, especially insecurity festered. There is also the question of political flexibility. Nigerians' political architecture is not one that easily accommodates comebacks, especially at the presidential level. While the Constitution does not explicitly bar a former president like Jonathan from contesting again under certain interpretations, the political reality is far more complex. Party dynamics, regional power rotations, elite consensus, and the financial muscle all play a decisive role in determining who gets to run, let alone who wins. And in this context, we should recall that a state high court or federal high court seated in Ondo State has given a judgment barring the governor of Ondo State, Ayedatiwa, from recontesting, arguing that the governor already served the tenure of his principal, late Rotimi Akeredolu, that the Nigerian Constitution bars an public office holder, especially in the presidency and governorship stool, for taking more than 2 oaths of office. So I think in this space, Jonathan is also finding himself in this judicial quagmire, if you ask me, because Jonathan served out the tenure of his principal, late Musa Yar'Adua, and then he was re-elected in 2011. If you go by that, according to the Nigerian Constitution, Jonathan will be technically or judicially barred from contesting for another term in office, but is still contestable in the Nigerian law court. Furthermore, the emergence of youth-driven political advocacy in Nigeria has historically been a double-edged sword. On one hand, it signals democratic viability and a willingness among younger citizens to engage with governance. On another breath, it is often raises concerns about manipulation, as political actors have been known to mobilize youth groups as proxies to text public sentiment or create artificial momentum. If you ask me, this is really the bane of the Nigerian youth, going by different young citizens organizations, from NANS, Nigerian Students Association, going by the Nigerian, the umbrella body that accommodates all the Nigerian youth in Nigeria, and their geopolitical zonal youth bodies and all that, each of them having factions, trying to outdo the other in order to have the attention of political actors in Nigeria. So the question will be, which of these groups are the one calling on Nigeria? Because we have also Bola Ahmed Tinubu Nigerian Youth Support Group. We have for P2B, which is the Obedient Movement, made up of majorly the Nigerian youth groups. Then you have those that say that they are articulated, who are also among the Nigerian youth. So the question is, which of these Nigerian youths are mobilizing and asking Jonathan to stage a comeback? And we should also recall that these youths that are calling on those political actors have forgotten that there is a bill or an act that is already in existence, a not too young to run bill, that was signed into law by Muhammadu Buhari. How has the Nigerian youth taken advantage of that to galvanize support for themselves? Is the question begging for answer from those who organize themselves in different shapes and sizes, calling themselves Nigerian youth, calling on those political actors to come and do what? Which they can do themselves. This brings us to our critical point. Is this movement organic or orchestrated? The timing alone invites scrutiny. Nigeria is still navigating the aftermath of recent elections, grappling with economic pressures and facing ongoing security challenges in different parts of the country. In such a context, the sudden re-emergence of Jonathan as a potential candidate cannot be viewed in isolation. It must be examined within the broader chessboard of Nigerian politics, where every move is calculated and every narrative is contested. There is also a general paradox at play. The same youth demographic that once championed change, that is for the APC, dismantling or demanding a break from the old guard, is now turning back to a figure firmly rooted in that very establishment. This brings us to the narrative of those youths that also marching in the INEC office, calling for David Mark and the officials of ADC to be, brought back to the INEC portal. We ask, were they not those people coming from APC and PDP? Have there any of them that have not tested the political waters in APC or PDP? Who among them is a new face? We are talking about the old guard. Jonathan, even if he comes up, will be accused by his people from the South of not doing anything for them, that he concentrated his developmental strides in the North. So where will Jonathan galvanize the support to win the election? And those youths that are calling on Jonathan, where are they coming from? And who is behind the call for Jonathan's comeback? Does this indicate a loss of faith in newer political actors? Or does it suggest that experience is being valued in uncertain times? Either way, it complicates the simplistic narrative of youths versus the old order. I will advise the Nigerian youth to make use of the not too young to run bill that is already an act in the Nigerian constitution. Jonathan himself has remained characteristically silent, at least publicly, so to say, in the Nigerian governance, because we know that Jonathan is representing Nigeria in the United Nations and also mediating on behalf of Nigeria, where there have been a lot of electoral fallouts in other African countries. So Jonathan has not been quiet, so to say. But in what concerns the Nigerian politics, it's true that Jonathan has remained aloof. This silence is not without significance. In politics, silence can be a strategy, a way to allow speculation to build without committing a course of action. It keeps options open, supporters energized, and the opponents guessing. But it also raises exceptions and speculations. Once raised, can be very difficult to manage. This silence is not without significance. In politics, silence can be a strategy, a way to allow speculation to build without committing to a course of action. It keeps options open, supporters energized, and the opponents guessing. But it also raises expectations, and expectations, once raised, can be difficult to manage. If he does not choose to enter the race, the implications would be profound. It would reshape the party alignments, disrupt existing ambitions, and potentially polarize the electorate. It would also force a national conversation about leadership, legacy, and the direction Nigeria wishes to take in the coming decade. Critics, however, are already sharpening their arguments. They question the logic of returning of a former leader when the country's challenges have evolved and in many cases intensified. I think I have already made my own insights in exactly what this insight is talking about. They argue that what Nigeria needs is not a recycling of past leadership, but a bold reimagining of governance. For them, Jonathan's candidacy, should it materialize, represents a step backward rather than forward. Supporters counter this by emphasizing continuity, experience, and need for a steady hand in turbulent times. They argue that leadership is not merely about novelty, but about capacity, and that Jonathan's past, despite its flaws, offers lessons and strengths that could be valuable in the present. I think if you go by that argument, it is neither here nor there. So it could have two sides to it. Between these opposing views lies the Nigerian voter, often caught between hope and skepticism. The electorate has time and again demonstrated both a desire for change and a tendency to return to familiar figures. This tension is at the heart of the country's democratic journey, and it is unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. The international dimension cannot be ignored either. Jonathan, since leaving office, has cultivated a reputation as a statesman, engaging in election monitoring and diplomatic initiatives across Africa and around the globe. This has enhanced his global standing and could, in theory, bolster his credibility at home. But whether international approval translates into domestic support is another matter entirely. Ultimately, the rallies and call for a Jonathan candidacy are more than just political theater. They are a reflection of a nation still searching for direction, still negotiating its identity, and still grappling with the fundamental questions of what kind of leadership it truly needs. Is this a genuine groundswell of support or carefully engineered campaign? Is it a sign of democratic engagement or a symptom of political stagnation? And perhaps most importantly, what does it say about the alternatives or lack thereof? That such a movement is gaining traction in the first place. As 2027 looms in the horizon, these questions will only grow louder. For now, the name of Goodluck Ebere Jonathan has once again entered the arena, although it has been here for a very long time. You know, even those that has taken it upon themselves that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu must return to Lagos has, even before the formation of the coalition, has thrown the name of Jonathan into the ring, and Jonathan has often found a way of navigating and removing himself in order to continue to be in the good books of the government, as he did during that of the late Muhammadu Buhari. But whether Jonathan is in the good books of Bola Ahmed Tinubu or not is a question hanging in the balance. Not as a relic of the past, but as a potential contender for the future. Whether this is a momentary ripple or the beginning of a significant political wave remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: Nigerian politics has rarely been predictable, and this development is unlikely to be an exception. Dear viewers, we have come to the end of today's News Express, which enables us to take a trip through the Nigerian political landscape, where we try to estray the actions and the inactions of the major political actors in Nigeria. And today, we looked at Goodluck Jonathan being drawn into the 2027 general elections by a segment of the Nigerian youths. Your views and mine might not align, but the aim of this is to make an informed opinion, leaving you to make out the answers for yourself. Thanks, and stay tuned as you follow us on our other programs. I remain Ugochukwu Ifeanyichukwu. Bye for now.